Laws of indices. Now this video is going to show us all the laws of indices from the C grade stuff right up to the high end B grade indices questions. So the 7 laws of indices that you need to know for your higher GCSE paper. And the first one is anything to the power of 0 always gives you the value of 1. So, for example, 5 to the power of 0 is equal to 1. And this is because if you think of 7 squared and divide it by 7 squared, well, you know that 7 squared is 7 times 7, which is 49 over 49. And what is 49 divided by 49? Well, it's 1. And one of the rules of indices, which we'll do in a minute, is that when you're dividing powers, you subtract them. So 7 squared divided by 7 squared becomes 7 to the power of 0. So 7 to the power of 0 is equal to 1. So as I said, anything to the power of 0 always gives you the value 1. And they often throw that question in to check that you understand indices. Second rule is a rule for multiplication. So y cubed times y to the 6. So that is y times y times y, that's y cubed, times y times y times y times y times y times y. And if you count up the number of y's we've got, it's y to the 9. And all that is, it's done by adding the 3 and the 6 together. So when multiplying indices, you add the powers. Let's look at a slightly more difficult example where you've got 2h cubed times by 4h to the power of 5. So as I said, remember when you're multiplying powers, you add them together. So 3 add 5 is 8. And all you do with the two numbers is you do 2 times 4, which is also 8. So the answer is 8h to the power of 8. Right, division is the next rule. So t to the power of 7 divided by t to the power of 4. Now, if we write this out in full, we've got t times t times t times t times t times t times t. And that's divided by t times t times t times t. Now what you should notice is that you can eliminate some of the ones from the bottom from the top. So you can cancel them out. So you can cancel one from the top, one from the bottom, another one, and another one. And what you'll notice you're left with is 3, which is t cubed. And that is related to what we start with by when you're dividing powers, you subtract them. So 7 take away 4 is 3. Let's look at a slightly more difficult example. Right, so remember when you're dividing powers, you subtract them. So m to the power of 9 divided by m to the power of 4 becomes m to the power of 5. And 24 divided by 3 is 8. So it's 8 times m to the power of 5. Right, the fourth law is where you've got something to a power inside a bracket to a power. And all you do in this situation is you multiply the two numbers together. So 2t squared in brackets cubed is actually t to the power of 6, because 2 times 3 is 6. Let's look at a slightly more difficult example. So in brackets 2c squared all to the power of 4. So firstly, look at the power bit. So 2 times 4 is 8 because you multiply the powers. But then you've also got to do 2 to the power of 4, which means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 again is 8, times 2 again is 16. So it's 16c to the power of 8. Fifth rule. 2 to the power of minus 1. Now what you need to remember is anything to the power of a minus power is 1 over. So minus power is 1 over. So here, 2 to the power of minus 1 is 1 over 2 to the power of 1, which is just 2. So 5 to the power of minus 3 is, the minus means 1 over 5 cubed. And 5 cubed is 5 times 5 times 5, which you should know is 125. So 5 to the power of minus 3 is 1 over 125. The sixth rule, 9 to the power of a half. Well, powers of a half are roots. So 9 to the power of a half is the second root of 9. And the second root of 9 means square root of 9, which is 3. (32 to the power of 1/5) means we're looking at the fifth root of 32. So what that means is we're looking for a number that multiply it by itself 5 times gives you 32. And the answer to that is 2. And the final rule, the seventh rule, is 8 to the power of 2/3, where this time we've got two parts combined to make a single fraction. Now remember, a minute ago when we were looking at fractions, so like 1/5, meant the fifth root. So here we've got 2/3. And the third bit means we want to find the third root of 8. And then the squared bit on top means we want to square that answer. So we're actually going to be doing the following. We're going to be doing the cube root 8 and then squaring that answer. So the cube root of 8 is a number times by itself 3 times, it gives you 8, which is 2. And 2 squared is 4. Let's look at another example. So 32 to the power of 3 over 5. So remember, this means we're looking at the fifth root of 32, and then we're going to take the answer and we're going to cube it. So we're actually going to do the fifth root of 32 and then cube that answer. So the fifth root of 32 we found up here was 2, and then we're going to cube that answer. So that's 8. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And they're the 7 rules of indices which you've got to learn for your GCSE exam.